Captain Orion Graves gripped the cold metal railing, staring out over the ruined cityscape of New York, now a ghost town. Once, this had been the beating heart of Earth, the last place that had dared to resist the Wraithlords' invasion. Now, the skyline was shattered, like broken bones scattered across a battlefield. Orion had lost count of how many times he'd seen the world fall apart, but this felt like the last time. "Sir, the mission's ready," a voice broke his reverie. It was Lieutenant Harper, her sharp eyes filled with the same grim resolve that had kept humanity from giving up. Orion turned, nodding, as the weight of command settled back onto his shoulders. There were no more speeches, no more promises to the people. Just survival. And this mission, the one that had been planned for weeks, might be humanity's last chance to strike a blow that would make the Wraithlords think twice. "We hit the convoy at 0400, Orion said, his voice low but steady. "We don't have time for mistakes. Everyone knows their orders?" "Yes, sir," Harper responded, her jaw tight, hands steady as she checked her gear. "The drop zone is locked in. We're ready for insertion." "Good. Prep the troops. I'll meet you on the ground," Orion replied, turning away from the view. This city, this broken Earth, was a reminder of how far they'd fallen, and how little time was left. The air outside the command center was thick with dust, a mix of debris from the collapsed skyscrapers and the smoke rising from ruined buildings. As Orion descended the narrow staircase to the lower level, his boots echoed in the silence of the abandoned structure. The rest of the soldiers were already assembling by the dropships, adjusting their exo-armor, tightening straps, checking weapons. There was no ceremony. There was no need for it. Every one of them knew what was at stake. "Captain!" a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Commander Eli Sands, leader of the recon team. Sands was always quiet, too quiet, especially considering the role he played in this mission. Orion raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "We've got a problem," Sands said, handing Orion a data pad. "Intel was off. The convoy's movements are irregular." Orion's expression hardened. "What does that mean?" Sands looked around, ensuring no one was within earshot, before leaning in. "The convoy's a decoy. They're not heading to the supply base like we thought. The real target is us. They've already identified our position." Orion's mind raced. It made sense. Why else would the Wraithlords let them get so close? They were playing a game, and humanity was the pawn. "How long do we have?" 15 minutes, maybe less," Sands replied. "Then we move out," Orion ordered without hesitation. "Harper, reroute the drop. We're going straight to the extraction point. We'll hit them hard before they know what hit them." As the team scrambled into action, Orion's mind swirled with the implications of the betrayal. The Wraithlords were getting too smart. They knew their every move, every tactic. Somewhere, someone had sold them out. Someone within their own ranks. The dropship's engines roared to life, and the team lifted off, soaring toward the cloud-ridden sky. Through the reinforced glass of the cockpit, Orion could see the glowing orange horizon, an omen, perhaps, of what was to come. "We hit them fast," Orion said, glancing at Harper. "Keep it tight. No mistakes." She nodded, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. This was supposed to be a clean mission. Now, it was a desperate race for survival. The dropship tore through the air, the landscape blurring beneath them. As they neared the extraction point, Orion keyed into the comms, his voice calm but commanding. "All units, prepare for immediate deployment. Stick to the plan. We move as one." The ship lurched as it broke through the clouds. The ground appeared below them, a scattered battlefield of wreckage. The convoy they'd been after was now nothing but a decoy, and the real threat lay in wait. "Hostile forces, dead ahead!" Lieutenant Harper shouted. "Brace for impact." Before Orion could respond, the dropship jolted violently. A blast of plasma fire struck the ship's rear thrusters, sending them into a tailspin. The ship's alarm screamed as it spun wildly through the air. "All units, brace for crash landing!" Orion shouted over the chaos, grabbing onto a nearby rail. He fought against the ship's violent movements, his stomach churning as the world spun. The ship hit the ground with a bone-rattling thud, skidding to a halt as dust and debris filled the air. Orion staggered to his feet, the ringing in his ears fading as he regained his bearings. The mission was no longer about striking a blow, it was about getting out alive. "All teams, get out! Now!" Orion barked, slamming his fist against the bulkhead to open the hatch. The soldiers rushed out, weapons raised, scanning for enemy movement. Orion moved swiftly, instinctively taking charge. This was his fight, and he wouldn't let anyone else die because of a mistake. Not on his watch. As he led the way, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a figure darting in and out of cover, just beyond the debris. His breath caught in his throat. No. It couldn't be. "Commander!" Orion shouted, waving Sands over. "Check that figure, don't engage yet. I think we have a problem." Sands crouched low, moving cautiously toward the figure. When he returned, his face was pale. "It's one of ours. It's Captain Harris." Orion's blood ran cold. Harris had been part of their team. He was trusted. But now, there he was, and he wasn't alone. Behind him, a small group of Wraithlord soldiers stood, weapons aimed directly at the team. Orion's heart hammered in his chest as realization hit him hard. The traitor had already revealed himself. Captain Harris had sold them out. "Take cover!" Orion shouted, but it was too late. Harris's smirk twisted as the Wraithlords opened fire, the sound of plasma bolts cutting through the air. The war had just begun. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal and the pungent tang of scorched earth. Orion stood in the wreckage of their failed mission, watching as the last of the dropships sputtered away into the smoky sky. The ruins of the battlefield stretched out before him, the silent witnesses of their failure. The traitor had almost cost them everything. He wiped the sweat from his brow, his hand trembling slightly despite the cold. Harris, the man who had once been his closest ally. Betrayal burned in his gut, but there was no time for weakness now. Harper approached, her face drawn tight. She had already heard the news about Harris. Her eyes were hard as she looked at him. "What now, Captain?" "We move forward," Orion replied, his voice hoarse. "The mission's not over. We've still got a chance." Harper's brow furrowed. "A chance? After what just happened?" "We regroup. Find the others. We're still in this fight, whether we like it or not. The Wraithlords might have known we'd hit that convoy, but they don't know what we're really after." She gave a curt nod. "What are we after, then?" Orion's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. "It's not just about taking down the Wraithlords anymore. There's something else. Something bigger." As they moved through the remnants of their destroyed position, Orion's thoughts drifted back to the moments after Harris's betrayal. The smoke had cleared enough for him to catch a glimpse of the treacherous officer, standing among the alien soldiers, a smug expression on his face as the Wraithlord forces moved in. He had been feeding them intel, and worse, he had known about their drop zone. There was no more pretending. Harris had sold them out, and now their survival hinged on what little intel they had left. "I need answers," Orion muttered to himself, more to the air than anyone in particular. "And I'll get them." The night was falling fast, and with it, the temperature. They found shelter in an old bunker, long abandoned before the war had even started. Orion sat at the makeshift command center, surrounded by flickering hollow screens and half-drawn maps, his mind working through the fragmented pieces of their plan. "Orion," Harper said, breaking his concentration. She stood in the doorway, holding a data pad. "I found something you need to see." Without a word, Orion took the pad from her and began scrolling through the encrypted files. His heart skipped a beat when the first image flashed on the screen, *, a schematic of a Wraithlord facility, deep within their occupied territory star. The facility was isolated, highly secured, and most shockingly it was labeled Project Red Sunday. Harper's voice was low, but full of urgency. "I've been digging into their recent movements. Project Red Sun, It's been mentioned in a few intercepted transmissions, but no one really knew what it was. Looks like we've just found out. Orion's gaze never left the screen. A project? What are they building? I don't know, Harper replied. But it's big. And it's too well protected. Whatever it is, it's important to them. Too well protected means it's a target, Orion said, his voice cold, calculating. We need to hit it. Fast. Harper shook her head, uncertain. I get the idea, but you're talking about going deep into enemy territory. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the resources. Orion stood, pacing the small room. It's not just about taking down another Wraithlord base. If this Project Red Sun is what I think it is, it could change everything. We're running out of time. What are you thinking? She asked quietly. I'm thinking we make our move before they finish whatever it is they're building, Orion replied. We infiltrate, take what we can, and destroy the rest. That's suicide, Harper snapped. You're asking us to take on the entire Wraithlord army, armed with nothing but hope and a skeleton crew. Orion looked her in the eye, unflinching. The Wraithlords have already taken everything from us. If we don't stop them now, we lose everything. I'm not waiting around to be slaughtered. I'm fighting back. Harper hesitated, clearly weighing the risk. Finally, she gave a sharp nod. Then we're with you. Let's finish this. By dawn, the remaining members of the squad had assembled, each one looking more determined than the last. The fallout from the betrayal still lingered, but Orion could see the shift in them. Harris had broken them, but now they were united in a singular purpose: survival. They loaded into the scavenged transports, weapons checked and armor fastened. Each soldier understood the risks. Few of them expected to return, but that wasn't why they were here. They were here to make the Wraithlords bleed. Orion addressed the group as they lined up, their faces grim but resolute. We're going after Project Red Sunday. This is a one-way trip, but it's the only shot we've got. Our objective is simple: get in, get the intel, and get out. Don't hesitate. Do your job. We make this count. The soldiers nodded, their expressions hardening. It wasn't about victory anymore. It was about taking the fight to the enemy, striking when they least expected it. As the convoy sped through the blasted landscape, the sense of urgency grew. The Wraithlords were never far away. And yet, for all their power, they still hadn't learned one thing about humanity. Even when faced with certain destruction, the human spirit could never be broken. And now, Orion Graves was going to prove it. The comms crackled. A voice, distorted and cold, came through the static. Captain Graves, it said, the tone mocking, familiar. You didn't think you'd escape the reckoning, did you? Orion froze. The voice was unmistakable. Harris. You're too late. The traitor's voice continued, smug and self-assured. The Wraithlords know where you are. You've been playing right into their hands. Orion clenched his fists, his pulse quickening. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was personal. He would make Harris pay for his betrayal. And if the Wraithlords wanted him dead, they'd have to get in line. We'll see about that, Orion growled into the comms, before cutting the connection. Harper turned to him, her voice steady. What now? We finish this, Orion replied, his eyes hard with determination. We don't stop until we've taken everything from them. As they drove toward the heart of enemy territory, Orion couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something far greater than a simple strike against the Wraithlords. Whatever Project Red Sun was, it had the potential to change everything. But first, they had to survive long enough to reach it. And survive they would. The night was dark, but the sky was lit with an unnatural glow. Orion Graves could feel the weight of the world bearing down on him as he and his squad approached the Wraithlord facility. The landscape was eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of the enemy's tech and the occasional snap of broken branches beneath their boots. This was it, the moment where everything could either shift in their favor, or be lost forever. Focus, Orion muttered to himself, scanning the horizon. His team was silent, each member cloaked in the shadows of the ruined world around them. There was no room for mistakes. The facility loomed in the distance, an imposing structure, nestled against the base of a mountain range. Its walls were lined with energy shields that shimmered like glass, protecting what had to be something of extreme importance. From the intel they'd gathered, it was clear that Project Red Sun was not just some weapon, it was the weapon. Harper, crouched beside Orion, whispered, "We've got eyes on the perimeter. 4 guards, rotating every 5 minutes." Orion nodded, pulling up his tactical map. "No surprises. We stick to the plan. Take them out clean, and make it quick." The sound of a low hum filled the air, growing steadily louder as a Wraithlord transport craft flew overhead, its silhouette barely visible against the dark sky. Orion held his breath, watching it disappear into the distance. They had to move fast. If they were spotted, everything would fall apart. "Let's move," Orion said, signaling his team forward. They moved with precision, shadows blending into shadows as they approached the first guard post. The night seemed to stretch forever, and every second felt like a lifetime. The guards were a dozen paces ahead, chatting casually, unaware of the fate that awaited them. Orion's pulse quickened as he surveyed the 2 guards standing near the control panel. He could see the faint outline of their weapons, their slung rifles barely visible against the darkened backdrop. No room for error. "On my mark," Orion whispered. Harper, Sands, and the rest of the team moved into position. Each soldier had a role, a duty to perform without hesitation. This wasn't just a strike. It was a test of everything they had learned, everything they'd fought for. "Mark," Orion said sharply. In perfect unison, the soldiers lunged forward, moving swiftly and silently. Harper was the first to engage, her hands a blur, as she dispatched one of the guards with a swift neck snap. Sands was right behind her, disarming the second guard with a fluid movement, knocking him unconscious before he had a chance to react. Orion's breath was steady, but his eyes never left the shadows. 1 down, 1 to go. The perimeter was still intact, but the clock was ticking. "We're clear," Sands said, his voice low but firm. "Let's move to the next checkpoint." Orion nodded. "Keep it tight. No chatter." The next 20 minutes passed in tense silence. They moved through the facility's outer security zones, taking down isolated patrols and avoiding the larger groups. Each moment felt like a heartbeat, the growing tension in the air thickening with every step closer to their target. But they were getting closer. By the time they reached the outer walls of the Central Command building, they could see the glow of the energy shields intensifying as they neared. Orion knelt low, eyes scanning the area ahead. The entrance was guarded by 2 more sentries, one of them visible from where he crouched, the other just beyond the archway. This was the most critical part of their mission. "Harper, you take the left," Orion ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sands with me. We'll go right. We disable the shields, get inside, and secure the intel." The team split, moving with deadly efficiency. Harper slid into position, her silenced pistol already aimed at the guard closest to her. The second sentry had just shifted his weight, unaware of the approaching danger. Orion's heart skipped a beat as everything seemed to fall into place. "No," he whispered. In an instant, Harper fired, the silenced round piercing the first guard's helmet and sending him crumpling to the ground. Sands moved with blinding speed, his rifle raised and aimed at the second guard's head. A single shot echoed through the night as the sentry collapsed in a heap. "Clear," Sands reported, his tone almost robotic. "Shields down in 5. Orion was already moving, his fingers tapping into the control panel, overriding the system. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his hands were steady. He couldn't afford to screw this up. Not now. The terminal beeped, the shields flickering before disappearing completely. "Go, go, go!" Orion barked, stepping through the opening. The squad rushed inside, weapons drawn, every corner a potential threat. The corridors were dimly lit, but the faint hum of machinery reverberated through the walls. Every step they took echoed in the silence, but there was no turning back. Inside, the layout of the facility was a labyrinth of metallic hallways and sterile rooms. Orion led the charge, pushing forward until they reached a central chamber. The walls were lined with holographic screens, and in the center, there was a large cylindrical structure, Project Red Sun Star. The device was unlike anything Orion had ever seen. It pulsed with a strange energy, its core glowing an eerie crimson. This wasn't just a weapon. This was something far worse. His gut tightened as he realized the truth. This is it, Harper whispered, her eyes wide in disbelief. Orion's heart pounded in his chest. Get the data. We need to know what this thing does. Sands moved to the terminals, plugging in a portable drive to begin the download. Orion kept watch, his fingers itching for a weapon, a way to fight back against the inevitable assault that would come. And it did. Just as the download was halfway complete, the facility's alarm system blared to life, the red lights flashing, signaling a full lockdown. Damn it, Orion muttered. We've been compromised. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Wraithlord soldiers. They were closing in fast. Get that data, Orion snapped, pulling out his rifle. Harper, take the rear. Sands, we cover the terminal. The team spread out, forming a defensive perimeter. They could hear the Wraithlords outside, their voices distorted over the intercoms, shouting commands in their harsh, alien tongue. Orion's mind raced. They had to hold out, even if it meant sacrificing everything to get the data. This was the turning point. If they could survive this and expose what Project Red Sun really was, they might have a chance to shift the tide of the war. But the enemy was relentless. The door to the chamber slammed open, and the first wave of Wraithlords stormed in, weapons raised. The firefight erupted in a flash. Plasma rounds collided with their shields, the sound deafening. Orion fired, moving with lethal precision, as Harper and Sands held the line. But the Wraithlords were only the beginning. There was a darker force behind Project Red Sun, something even the rebels hadn't prepared for. The battle had only just begun. The walls of the command center were shuddering under the relentless barrage. Orion could feel the tremor of the explosions through the soles of his boots, the echoes of plasma fire and heavy footsteps shaking the building's foundations. The Wraithlords were closing in, and the clock was ticking. But despite the chaos around them, there was one thought that gnawed at Orion's mind more than anything else. What was Project Red Sun? The room was dimly lit, the glow of the terminal screens the only source of light in the chamber. Orion paced back and forth, his hands clenched tightly behind his back. Harper and Sands stood near the door, weapons raised and ready for whatever might come through next. Any word on the download? Orion asked, his voice taut with urgency. Sands was hunched over the terminal, sweat trickling down his face as he worked furiously. Almost there, he muttered, his fingers moving with practiced speed. Just a few more minutes. Orion's eyes darted to the door. He could hear the sound of distant shouts, their alien language a harsh, guttural growl. The Wraithlords were getting closer, and there was no telling how much time they had left. 5 minutes, Sands said finally, as the terminal beeped in acknowledgement. We've got the data. It's all here. Orion stepped forward, his breath caught in his throat as he saw the files appear on the screen. The data was staggering. Maps, schematics, and detailed reports about the project. But the last file, was the one that made his blood run cold. Project Red Sun is not just a weapon, Orion whispered, scanning the file with disbelief. It's a catalyst for human extinction. Harper frowned, walking over to get a closer look. What does that mean? This isn't just a new weapon, it's something else? Orion's gaze lingered on the words, as if the reality was too much to grasp. The Wraithlords are using the project to hijack the human genome. They're creating a new hybrid species. Half Wraithlord, half human. The goal is to infiltrate humanity, turn our people into soldiers loyal to them, whether they want to be or not. Harper's face went pale. You're saying they're going to change us? Literally modify us? Turn us into them? Orion nodded, the full weight of the revelation crashing down on him. That's what this project is. It's the end of us. If they succeed, there will be no human resistance left. The entire galaxy will be under their control. A cold silence filled the room as the team absorbed the magnitude of what they were facing. There was no fighting it. This wasn't just a battle against alien invaders. This was a war for the very essence of humanity. And it was worse than any of them had imagined. "We can't let them finish this," Orion said, his voice sharp with newfound resolve. "This data, everything we've gathered, it's the key. We destroyed the facility. We stopped Project Red Sun from ever seeing the light of day." Harper nodded, her grip tightening on her rifle. "We're not walking out of here alive, are we?" "No," Orion replied, his voice heavy but steady. "But we die with purpose." The door to the command center slammed open, and the team immediately snapped to attention. A dozen Wraithlord soldiers poured in, their weapons trained on the group. They moved with deadly precision, but even they seemed to hesitate, sensing the change in the air. Orion stood tall, meeting their gaze. "This is where you fail," he said coldly. "This is where humanity decides its fate." Without warning, the first plasma bolt slammed into the wall beside him, sending a shower of sparks across the floor. The room erupted into chaos. Harper, quick as ever, was already firing, her shots precise and deadly. Sands followed suit, launching a volley of fire that tore through the advancing Wraithlord ranks. Orion took cover behind a nearby terminal, his mind racing. The Wraithlords were relentless, but this time, they were fighting something they didn't fully understand. "We need to plant the charges," Orion shouted over the noise. "Get to the reactor!" The team moved as one, darting from cover to cover as the Wraithlords fired relentlessly. Each soldier fought with everything they had, their lives flashing before their eyes as they fought for the future of humanity. But for all their skill, they were outnumbered. The Wraithlords weren't just soldiers, they were a force of nature, and their overwhelming strength was beginning to show. Orion's heart pounded as he sprinted toward the reactor room, leading the charge. The countdown had already begun in his mind. They were too close. The moment they reached the heart of the facility, they would have only seconds to plant the charges before everything was lost. "Plant the charges," Orion ordered, his voice harsh with urgency. "Now!" Harper moved quickly, setting the first charge at the base of the reactor. Sands did the same on the opposite side, his movements precise despite the chaos unfolding around them. The countdown was ticking, each second stretching into eternity. Orion checked his watch, his pulse quickening. 5 seconds, he muttered. Then, the unexpected happened. The ground beneath their feet trembled violently, and the walls of the facility groaned in protest. A low, rumbling sound echoed through the chamber, like the building itself was coming to life. "What's happening?" Harper shouted, looking around frantically. Orion's eyes widened in realization. "They've triggered the failsafes. The facility's going into lockdown. If we don't get out now, we're trapped." The team made a break for the exit, but as they neared the door, something caught Orion's eye, something he hadn't expected. In the corner of the room stood an imposing figure, its glowing eyes staring straight at him. It was a Wraithlord, yes, but different. Taller, more imposing, its features more alien, yet distinctly human in its form. The hybrid. Orion's heart skipped a beat as the creature took a step forward. "What the hell is that?" Sands hissed. "That's their plan," Orion said, his voice grim. "A prototype of their new army. A human Wraithlord hybrid." The hybrid's voice was cold, calculating. "You think you can stop this? You think you can stop me?" Orion didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired, the blast catching the hybrid in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. Instead, it smiled, the expression chilling in its inhuman features. "You're too late," it said, its voice dripping with arrogance. "You won't survive." "We will." Orion's mind raced. There was no time for hesitation. "Harper, Sands, get out of here!" he yelled. "I'll cover you." They didn't argue. Harper pulled Sands away as they bolted for the exit. Orion turned, his rifle aimed directly at the hybrid. The explosion came seconds later. The entire facility shook as the reactor went critical. The hybrid's scream was swallowed by the roaring inferno, but the impact was undeniable. The facility erupted in flames, and the shockwave threw Orion to the ground. The last thing he saw was the flash of light as the building collapsed in on itself. The world was darkness. The last breath of humanity's defiance was a blinding light, a final gasp in the face of extinction. But as the dust settled, the faintest sound lingered, the soft whisper of resistance. Humanity was not gone. Not yet. And not ever.